are biased, the Idaho Press Club are biased, all media, newspaper, radio.
To be completely blunt here, Brian, and there are plans to expand
indoctrination.
That's right.
Well, Idahoans are also concerned.
Horror shot. That line would be moving a little bit farther west.
I'm like crying.
Nobody wants to see
dark money is influencing policy in our state.
Well, that's not how this works.
Hi there, I'm Brian Hyde, and this is Nowhere to Hide, where we take apart certain examples of media bias in Idaho's corporate and legacy media. Got a couple of great examples for you today. Our theme is media darlings. And we're going to introduce you to one of the media darlings who you might recognize from earlier episodes back in September. Now, this is in particular regarding school choice and in particular regarding a young man who ran for the school board in Boise. That's Shiva Raj Bhandari. You're going to learn what he's been up to and what he's learned during his first 3 months on the board. Now, if you remember, this is the young Boise senior who's attending high school, who was very adamant about, I want to be on the school on the school board. I want to make sure that students have a voice. And we compared, the youth and especially the embrace on the part of people who have more of a socialist or collectivist leaning to bring young people to the front, let them be the face, let them be the voice of the movement. The young Octoberists and others who, represent rather the promising future that we must all have. And, Greta Thunberg, of course, is a great example of this too. Who can question her? After all, this young woman, she just wants to save the world. I mean, she sits on a panel of experts to tell us what's happening climate-wise. Really, what was her background again? Oh, that's right. She's a kid who happens to be singing the tune that certain people in power would like her to be singing. So, having said that, let's dive into the story. Idaho Ed News, in a perfectly objective piece. No, it's not. It's a puff piece. But they say Boise's teenage trustee says he's in exactly the right spot. Shiva Raj Bhandari does typical high school senior stuff. He's a varsity athlete, enjoys camping with his friends, has a part-time job with the Idaho Conservation League. But listen to this. He also takes on lofty tasks, including a recent trip to Egypt to protest at the United Nations Climate Summit. And in September, he became the first student elected to the Boise School District's Board of Trustees. This is a good-looking kid. I mean, this is an all-American-looking boy. He says, I'm in exactly the right spot, says Raj Bhandari, while participating in the annual convention of the Idaho School Boards Association in Coeur d'Alene alongside more than 500 adults. Now, his win drew national attention, something Raj Bhandari says has been exciting, but that was never the focus of his campaign. He says, the coolest part of my trusteeship has not been this election or national news, but it's been hearing from so many students that previously weren't heard from. That's what's so great about having a student on the board and building this culture of empowerment. It's contagious. Now, I can't fault him for his enthusiasm, but there is kind of a, you have to wonder. I mean, look, not saying the students shouldn't have a voice, but sometimes you have to wonder, are there those who are trying to turn it over to the students as either cover for, things that they would like to implement, but maybe they feel like, well, too many adults would protest. Where if it's a kid bringing it forward, well, he's a kid. Come on, give it a chance. What could go wrong with, this particular policy or that particular policy? It's just a suggestion. But again, how could you deny that face, those puppy dog eyes, telling you this is what I want to do? Now, there's also a wrinkle in that he wants to attend an out-of-state college following his graduation this coming spring, meaning he'd have to vacate his position, leaving the remaining trustees responsible for appointing a new board member. And this is, again, where it's got to be a student. Raj Bhandari says he hopes they'll instate a student as his replacement. Now, he says he wants to see more students at events like the Idaho School Board Association's event, not as speakers or in workshops, but actually in the crowd. Talking to all the ISBA members, people are like, well, congratulations, that's so cool. He asks, now really, is it cool? Because why don't you implement it? Get a student on your school board. It's not that hard. There's so many resources. There's so many school districts where they've done it and it's worked. It's not just here in Boise. I'm happy to talk to anyone about it. Now, this is all pretty tame, and really, it's a glowing piece. I mean, you can't help but just kind of come away with a, oh, wow, what a great young man. But at the same time, you kind of have to ask yourself, why was it that the press, particularly the media, the corporate media and legacy media, why were they so supportive of this particular young man? That has a lot to do with the tune that he was singing as he was running for this school board position. Raj Bhandari is an activist for, look at this pedigree, climate justice, social justice, gun violence prevention. You can just come out and say it now, Reva. It's gun violence prevention equals gun control. You're for gun control. Come out and say it. The honesty won't hurt you. Also, voting rights. And he's one of the driving forces behind the Babe Vote initiative, which focuses on registering Gen Z and millennial voters. Now, there's no denying that it's important to have young people participating in elections. If you look at the red wave that wasn't for this last midterm, part of that has to do with younger voters who were not willing to jump on the Trump train. And again, not faulting them for their choice. I'm just saying the younger generation, in my opinion, has been successfully indoctrinated to, at the very least, be suspicious about freedom, if not outright fear it. But they're also very, very favorable. And I think poll after poll shows this. They have a very favorable connotation of what socialism is. In fact, most think that it's really a great thing. So this wonderful puff piece runs in IdahoEdNews.org. Thank you to the Idaho Freedom Foundation for calling it out and saying, well, this is a really healthy piece of journalism. Totally normal, totally healthy. Journalist, I'm putting this in quotation marks, Kevin Reichert's advice, I don't know, cry harder or something. Yeah, they don't like it when someone questions, their objectivity. The only way they would accept it is if someone with whom they agree, someone with their bias, tells them, hey, you guys are biased. Oh, yeah, show me a mainstream source that says I'm biased. Yeah, they're not going to do it. They're in lockstep with you. It's like having a conversation with a cultist. They're true believers. They're not going to change their minds. And they may believe that the ends justify the means. Speaking of occultist mentality, look at this headline from the Idaho Statesman. Now, this is an opinion piece. But the Senate Education Committee will be packed with far-right freshmen bent on vouchers and censorship. Its chairman needs the courage to kill bills. Now, I don't know of any example of any proposed bill at this point that even so much as contains the word vouchers. There is talk of educational choice. There's talk about the money should follow the students rather than just simply follow, the system. Fund students, not systems, but that represents a choice that apparently people who are of a more collectivist mindset really don't like. So look at this. The Idaho Senate Education Committee will be a disaster. Can this legislator rein it in? It's going to be a big issue during the upcoming legislative session, and this is one of the things. Choice scares the heck out of people who want to keep it under the control and under the auspices of some centrally planning authority, which seems to have a lot in common with what is it called again? Oh yeah, socialism. On the other hand, school choice, which we're told, it's going to destroy things for needy kids and for more rural districts. No, it actually helps them the most. So I got to give a tip of the hat here to Joe Bingham for taking the Idaho Statesman and Brian Clark of the Statesman specifically to task. Tuition assistance for poor parents. Is this the far right? A lovely meme which very clearly points out the trouble that at least some on that particular side of the issue have a connection making. Look, it's great to see this young man involved in the Boise School Board. I wish him the very best. I suspect, however, that this is probably just the beginning. This was just the start of a political career, and who knows? Maybe there's aspirations to be the next AOC or equivalent. I don't know for sure. Some of the stances that this young man has are right in keeping with that nice, acceptable left-wing stance that will make you a media darling no matter what. How would they treat a kid who believed in, limited government or accountability in spending or perhaps personal responsibility or respect for private property rights? I suspect it would be a much different kind of article, probably something involving the words far right, unless I miss my guess. That's today's Nowhere to Hide. I'm Brian Hyde. Thanks for joining us.
Reporters are biased, the Idaho Press Club are biased, all media, newspaper, radio.
To be completely blunt here, Brian, and there are plans to expand
indoctrination.
That's right.
Well, Idahoans are also concerned.
Horror shot. That line would be moving a little bit farther west.
I'm crying.
Nobody wants to see
dark money is influencing policy in our state.
Well, that's not how this works.